Talking baseball, baseball and the O's.
Welcome to the Talkin Orioles baseball podcast. My name's Benny. I'll be the host. I will be the one talking Orioles baseball with you. And let me tell you, we're going to do one thing and one thing only, and that is talk Baltimore Orioles baseball on this podcast. It's something I have a passion for maybe more than anything in my life. I absolutely love these Orioles from the time I was a little kid all the way through now. I've been with them through the dark days. I've been with them through the dark times, the tough times. I can run down crazy names. But let me tell you, we are minutes away from the first pitch being thrown in a spring training game for the Baltimore Orioles this season. Coming off their 101 win season. First time they've ever won 100-plus games in my lifetime, which is unbelievable. It's amazing. They truly lived up to my expectations, because this time last year, I was telling everybody, that the Baltimore Orioles were one of the best teams in baseball. And everyone called me crazy. Everyone said, oh, they're taking a step back. Oh, they had a nice little second half last year. But no, they're going to take a little step back. But they're close. They're close. I go, they're not taking a step back. They're not just close. They're here. They're ready to roll. This roster, top to bottom, is pretty much as talented as any roster in baseball. Maybe you want to say the Dodgers or somebody like that. Sure, if you're paying $400 million for your roster, that's fine. You might be slightly more talented. But let me tell you, these Orioles, last season, this season, they're here. And they're not going anywhere, guys. In fact, this time last year, I wanted to start this podcast. I'm actually upset with myself because I didn't start this podcast. But I'm going to tell you a little something about me before we get too deep into it. I can be a bit of a jinx. I really can. And I'm not saying that I still can't jinx them in a game or a situation or a pitch or an at-bat. But in the grand scheme of things, I truly believe these Orioles are jinx-proof. They're that good. They're that talented. And I thought they were last year, but until you see it, until you see the team win 101 games, and all year you've done nothing but talk them and back them and tell everybody how they're one of the best teams in baseball. Until you actually see it. Personally, I was a little worried to jinx them because I felt I would come on here. I would start doing this show. I would be talking about the Orioles and how great they are. And I was a little worried that maybe they would wind up taking a step back. But now, I'm not worried, folks. I am not worried with this organization, because these guys, these players, Rushman, Henderson, Westberg, Mountcastle, O'Hearn, Mullins, Hayes, Santander, I'll run you down the whole list. I truly will. These guys are jinx-proof. This team is still going to be one of the best teams in baseball. I couldn't be any more excited about this season on our hands. And that's why I had to start this. Because, frankly, I can talk Baltimore Orioles with the best of them. It's probably the thing I do best in my life, in the whole world, is talk these Baltimore Orioles. So it only makes sense to come on here, talk some Orioles, talk turkey with you guys, talk Orioles turkey with you guys, and go through this journey because, listen, I'm 35. I've yet to see a World Series in my life. I want nothing more than a Baltimore Orioles World Series in my life. Been waiting to get a tattoo just for the Orioles to win a World Series. Like that's the criteria of me getting my first tattoo, is the Orioles win a World Series. And I'm sticking to that. I'm a grown adult. I can do whatever I want, but I'm sticking to that because that's how much it means to me. It means everything to me, guys. And you'll get that. You'll understand that. It'll come out. So, listen, we dig deep into the roster. We can get with the nitty-gritty. We could go broad scale and talk all of it. Listen, we're going to get to all of it because I'm going to be on here a lot, talking a lot of Orioles baseball with you guys. But I just want to say I'm very happy to get this going, get this started. And frankly, it's been some exciting times, even just in the past few weeks for Baltimore Orioles fans. I'm sure what I'm going to say is not breaking news to anybody, especially anybody watching an Orioles podcast. But there are some events that I want to get off my chest. I want to talk about. I need to talk about. Starting with the new ownership. Bye-bye, Angelo's family. See ya, Peter and John. Listen, I don't think they were the best people. They definitely weren't the best owners. Could they have been worse? Yes. Absolutely, they could be worse. And honestly, there were times where I defended these Angeloses because they always get talked about how cheap they are and they're never willing to spend. That, to me, isn't entirely true. I've watched them go out and spend money. They typically do it wrong. They typically hire the wrong people who are going to then spend the money wrong. And that's been the history of my life as a Baltimore Orioles fan. I mean, you go back to the late 90s teams. Let's pay Brady Anderson. Let's pay Brady Anderson. Let Palmeiro and Alomar and Messina and all these other guys walk. But let's play Brady Anderson steroid. Wrong decision. Then, a little bit later, you want to try and get it back. You want to try and make a run. You sign Javi Lopez and Miguel Tejada. I loved it. I was huge on both of them, really. But really, Javi Lopez I loved as a kid. But, they never really lived up to it. I think Tejada had, an all-star season or two. Sure. But ultimately, it was just money spent wrong. And everything else around those guys were horrible. 70-year-old Vlad Guerrero, which was awesome to see, but still, not the right money. Albert Bell, I think even before those guys. Albert Bell, wrong money spent. We all know Chris Davis. And frankly, if you go back to those 2015, 2016, whatever that period was, I mean, there are other guys you could have signed. Bringing back Nicky Markakis. I don't care that his back was a little screwed up. You bring back Nick Markakis. He was everything for this team. You just make the wrong decisions, man. You don't keep Nelson Cruz. You keep the wrong guys. So my point on all of that is that the Angeloses have spent some money. They have been willing to go out and spend money, make moves, bring in a Sammy Sosa again towards the end of it, and not a pretty Orioles career, but attempting to do the right thing. So I think they've somewhat gotten a bad rap as far as just being completely dirt cheap. I mean, they're not the Rays. They're not some of these the A's. They're not these guys that will absolutely never spend a dime. So I give them a little credit there. The problem is that they created a toxic environment around them. And a lot of times, similar, let's say, the Dallas Cowboys sort of thing, not to compare us to the Cowboys in any which way, but just the idea of having a little too much ego, the owner having too much ego and too much pull for the wrong moves, for maybe the wrong reasons. That's kind of the vibe I got from the Angeloses. And listen, again, I'm not necessarily saying they're horrible people. I'm not saying they were the worst owners. But boy, does it feel good to get rid of the Angelos family and bring in not only new owners, but star-studded owners. Not only star-studded owners, but guys that have billions upon billions. And you're bringing in two of these guys with billions upon billions. I mean, the one's a Baltimore native, Maryland native, whatever you want to call it, DMV native, okay? And he wants to win. He wants to win for this city, for this town. He knows how bad it's been for these Orioles, and he's expressed interest years ago in buying the Orioles. So he got his prize. This isn't just a thing where a billionaire woke up one day and said, oh, I can buy a sports team? No, he said, I can buy the Orioles, and I'm going to do it. And they made it happen. Another guy just spent who knows how many millions running for a presidency 4 years ago that he had zero chance at winning. Now he's backing a baseball team, and he has billions behind him. Not to mention then you bring in Cal Ripken. Nothing else needs to be said to an Orioles fan other than Cal Ripken has an ownership stake now in the Baltimore Orioles. That's the way it should be. That's the way, since he's retired for 25 years, let's call it. we've been screaming for Cal Ripken to get ownership in this team. And you know, that it makes the most sense. And it makes you feel good as an Orioles fan because there has been those rumors of, oh, are they going to move? Are they going to move? I never took those seriously. But at the end of the day, you have to somewhat take them seriously. And knowing that a guy like Cal is behind this team now, they're not going anywhere. Nothing negative is happening to the Orioles or the brand. If anything, it's sticking to the Ripken way. You see that right there? The Ripken way. The Oriole way. That's what we've done. Grant Hill is another name. You got a ton of cool names in there. But ultimately, this new ownership group is taking the flag that was in Baltimore, in Camden Yards, this Orioles flag. We almost removed it and put in one 10 times the size. Because that's what we did, guys. That's what we have now. We have some of the biggest owners in baseball now. We have a guy like Cal Ripken who understands how important the Orioles are to Baltimore, understands how important Camden Yards is to Baltimore and these Orioles, understands what it means in here to be an Oriole. That stuff's not going anywhere now, guys. And I couldn't be any more happy. Now, is the deal finalized? It's finalized without being finalized. Unfortunately, and it sounds sad to say, but Peter Angelos kind of needs to move on from this life, not the Orioles, from this life until the Angelos family in general can move on. But ultimately, it doesn't even matter if Rubenstein and these other owners have full control yet, have full money yet, because it's theirs. The deal is signed. And as shitty as the Angelos family can be with backing out of deals and dragging this shit out, the fact that it didn't get dragged out means that it's not going anywhere. And there's no reason to. We know the kids don't really want to be a part of it. We know the dad's on his last legs. I mean, it's only a matter of time. And the way they did it, listen, gets the Angeloses $1.7 billion that they don't have to pay certain taxes on, which great. They get their money. They're going to be happy. They're going to be thrilled. And guess what? They'll be thrilled watching us win a World Series, whether they're still there or not. Because this ownership group is something that's going to cause that. We've already seen the ripples effects, and we'll get to that. But we've already seen that. And it's especially important that it happened right now because of the core of players that they have. And again, we'll dig more into this. But when you have these young guys that, yes, you have control of them for 5-6 more years, it's amazing. You're like, we have this unbelievable window, 5-year window of these guys in their prime coming up. These elite blue chip prospects, some of which have already shown what they can do on the major league stage. Adley, Gunnar, your AL Rookie of the Year last year. We've seen what Gray Rod can do in the back half of last year. These guys have this 5-year window, but guess what? This new ownership means that it's not a 5-year window. It means it's a 10 to 15-year window. It means that most of these core players could retire Baltimore Orioles in 10 to 15 years. And hopefully with multiple championships to their resume. And then at that point, you've built a culture. You've built the organization. You have the right people in place that now 10-year window, guess what? Could become a 15, 20, 30-year window. It's insane to say, but the next 35 years of my life could be some of the best 35 years of any Baltimore Orioles, period, ever. And that's saying a lot, because the Orioles way back before my time had these runs. They had these guys. You see the 70 World Series champs behind me. 83 was the last time they made it and won it. It's one of these things, I haven't even been close to it. Getting swept by the Kansas City Royals in the ALCS was the closest I ever got to the World Series in my life. And let me tell you, that stung like all hell. And I hated it. And I thought we were the team of destiny, but apparently they were. But what this means now, the ownership especially, is that there's no end in sight now, guys. This window is beyond open. This window means that we can win with homegrown and then buy the right pieces. And we can keep the homegrown for as long as we need. We're not picking one, like I said, with Brady Anderson. Or we're not picking one with Chris Davis. We're picking a group. We're picking 4 or 5 that we can pay. And yeah, maybe not everyone's here for 15 years. That's not how it works. Especially if you're successful. Also, though, if you're not successful. If you're not successful, then you change stuff up. If you are successful, well then, guys want to really get paid. Well, guess what? We have the money to pay the core group now. Because of this ownership. It's beyond special. It's something I'm so excited about. When that news broke, God, it felt good. Because I remember, you'd see some leaks throughout this winter. Oh, there's some talks. Oh, this guy's interested. Oh, all I would say to these people is the Angelos has dragged the hell out of this thing. You saw what happened with the Masson situation. It's still going. That was like 10 years ago. And it's still going. So they drag shit out in court. They're not the best people to work with as far as contracts and deals and things along those lines. They drag this shit out. So it's so positive, relieving, exciting. The fact that, these Baltimore Orioles have real backers, have real owners. A plus owners, let's call them. And yes, they haven't stepped in, so maybe they meddle too. Maybe they don't. Maybe they do. But at the moment, just like these prospects before they come up, I'm projecting that they're going to be A plus owners, man. And again, with a guy like Ripken in there, he doesn't have to be the top guy. But with a guy like Cal in there, it's not going to go sideways. It's not going to go bad. He's seen these mistakes. He's known what's happened. And he knows this franchise. Grew up with it. Just like me. Well, not just like me. He obviously had not only much better access growing up to the franchise, but ultimately became the face of the franchise, unfortunately, still to this day. Even though that might change in some regard. He'll always be one of the faces of the franchise. But hopefully, maybe we get a dynasty on our hands and guys like Adley and Gunnar and Grayson and all of these other guys maybe become the face of the franchise also. To people, maybe not in their 50s and 60s. People younger, in their 30s or even teens. These are the guys that are going to be the real face of the franchise moving forward. And hopefully, they have so much success that I can buy one of these things of the entire roster to display like my dad did. Like, we can have that. It's possible. Another big part of the new ownership, though, is the stadium naming rights. And this was something that, it just didn't feel right when they were talking about it. I have no problem with Great America Ballpark or Citizens Bank Ballpark or PNC Park or wherever. I don't care if you name it that. There's a few stadiums that matter. You have Fenway. That's Fenway. That'll always be Fenway. It's not Fenway brought to you by Dunkin' Donuts. It's Fenway. You have Wrigley. I mean, technically, yes, Wrigley is named after Wrigley Gum and the guy that owned Wrigley Gum. Yes, I get it. But, he didn't pay for the naming rights. He made the stadium. So they called it his last name. And that's his last name. So, yeah, is it somewhat of a sponsor? Halfway. Sure. But it's iconic. Very few stadiums like that are iconic. As much as I hate them, Yankee Stadium. Yeah, you have the old Yankee Stadium and you have the new Yankee Stadium. It's not Yankee Stadium brought to you by Comcast. It's not Comcast Field at Yankee Stadium. It's Yankee Stadium. And on the same lines, you have Orioles Park at Camden Yards. Stadium that brought it back. The stadium that changed it all. Stadium that influenced a generation of stadiums. Still, to this day, I believe the prettiest ballpark in baseball. So when they were talking about changing the naming rights, did it put a sour taste in my mouth. I hated the idea of it. Hey, what are you going to call it? Orioles Park at Camden Yards, brought to you by Old Bay. I don't know. I don't know what they were thinking. I don't know what they were talking. But let me tell you, these new owners, they don't care about whatever it was, the 10 or 20 million that we would have gotten for the naming rights. Maybe that was per year. I don't know. I don't remember the details of the proposed deal that I saw out there. Ultimately, though, the new owners don't care about that money. They're willing to spend way more than that. And they don't need to ruin the brand, tarnish the brand for, I'm calling it a measly few $1 million, but to me, it's everything. To them, it's measly, guys. It's measly. Especially with them looking at what they just bought and where this franchise is at and how much money this franchise is going to be worth and how much money they're going to bring in through everything. Guys, Orioles Park at Camden Yards is one of those things that just needs to stay that way. So the new owners coming in and the deal then not getting done, that's what is signaled to me when after the new owners signed the deal, that they then said, you know what, we're actually not going to sell the naming rights, at least for this year. I think it's forever. I do. I don't see any reason why these owners would look at that amount and be like, yeah, let's tarnish the brand. And again, goes back to Cal. I think Cal's a guy that's going to look at that and go, guys, it's not worth the money. It's not changing anything about our approach. It's not changing anything about our additions. It's not changing anything about the contracts that we're going to be offering and putting out there. So why would we do it? This is iconic. Not to mention, we're also in the running for the All-Star game a couple years down the line. And it's about time they come back to Camden Yards. But do you really want everybody saying this T. Rowe Price Stadium at Oriole Park at Camden Yards? At a certain point, just call it Oriole Park at Camden Yards. Keep that name. And again, the All-Star game will probably be there in a few years. I hope it is. I'd love to be there for it. But I'd love to be at Orioles Park at Camden Yards for it. And I think that'll be the case. Because I think that they're making the right rational decisions for the franchise, for the organization, for the team, for the fans, for the culture of it. I love it. I absolutely love it. And listen, they've talked about renovations on the stadium. Yeah, listen, it probably could use some. I love the place. It's my favorite place on earth is that ballpark. But yeah, could it use some renovations? Sure. It was made 35 years ago or whatever. Yeah. Now, I'm hoping, I've read kind of their ideas. I've read some of the things they want to accomplish. Some sound awesome. Some kind of seem like, I don't want it to ruin the feel of the stadium, and I hate to keep reiterating this point, that's when the new ownership and Cal Ripken is there to make sure these things don't change in a way that are unfamiliar. Don't change in a negative way. They change in a way that makes you go there and appreciate the stadium more. That goes there and you get the nostalgia that you still had when they walked in there in the mid-90s. That's what it's all about, gang. And I want to believe that this ownership group, especially with Cal Ripken behind it, will make sure that that's what happens. Yeah, maybe you create more openness in the concourse so you can see the game. That'd be nice. Because Lord knows how many times I've been at the bathroom line or the drink line or waiting for a hot dog or even wherever. And having to watch on the little mini TVs they have up there. Lord knows those could use an addition. The new owners should put some bigger freaking screens out on the concourse. I mean, something as simple as that. What year is it? I'm watching the TV from 97. I mean, stuff like that goes a long way. But yeah, it would be nice from the concourse to be able to look out onto the field like you can at Citizens Bank Park or one of these newer stadiums that thought that through and created that vibe. And it's awesome. But I've been to a lot of games at Citizens Bank Park, guys. That's the Phillies stadium if you don't know. But like, I've been to a lot of games there. I've walked that concourse as the game's going on. Can you see the field? Yeah. Can you watch the game? Not really. You really can't. You don't know what's going on. So you still have to look at the TV. So I don't want them to absolutely demolish this place from the inside to create something that doesn't even matter. Again, that just bigger TVs could fix. It's the same thing. If I'm on the concourse at Citizens Bank Park and something happens, I look up at one of the TVs. I might look at the field at first, see people going crazy, see a couple guys running, but I don't know where the ball is. I don't know what happened. So I'm looking at the TV to figure it out. Same exact thing, gang. Same exact thing. But I think it's nothing but good things. I think they're only going to play into the nostalgic aspect of Orioles Park at Camden Yards. And again, just this ownership group, it gives me so much hope and optimism for the right things happening. For them doing the right things, which means a lot. It goes a long way with the fans. And something like the naming rights. Doing the right thing. That's what it matters, guys. All right. So that was the first big news, I feel like, of our off season. New ownership meant everything. Second biggest piece, we got our ace, guys. Now, I'm one who believes Grayson Rodriguez is going to take a step up this year and become that ace. I think Gray Rod becomes that ace. I think he gets himself in the Cy Young conversation. But now, with Corbin Burnes, I mean, we might have two. If everything's all right with Kyle Bradish, maybe even three guys in the top 5 to 10 Cy Young voting. That's what I project this year. But Corbin Burnes is the man that we went out and we said we wanted an ace. Everyone said we needed an ace. I'm not going to say we needed an ace. So again, I loved Gray Rod. I love Bradish. Obviously, we'll get to the Bradish stuff, okay? But I loved Gray Rod. I liked this whole rotation. I remember literally the week that we got Burnes. And the weeks prior to us getting Burnes, everyone said, oh, you need an ace. Oh, you need a pitcher. Oh, you need a starter. I didn't see it. Well, we're bringing back the exact same thing last year, only more experienced, and at the time was healthier. Why do people think that this rotation isn't special even without Corbin Burnes? I thought it was at least good enough. Good enough to really compete for not just another division, but a World Series. Because again, Grayson Rodriguez has all the stuff in the world. And he's shown the ability to learn off of his mistakes and improve and put up unbelievable numbers when that kid is clicking. I mean, he's truly one of the best pitchers in baseball. When he's clicking, his stuff is unhittable. And again, Kyle Bradish, we'll get to the whole Bradish stuff, but in a nutshell, in a vacuum, he had an unbelievable year last year. One of the top Cy Young candidates. Taking that next step forward. I believe in Kyle Bradish. And if we want to go even deeper, well, we're not going to do that yet. Let's talk Corbin Burnes, and then we'll get deeper onto the rotation. We'll talk about the rotation, because obviously with Bradish and some means, and there's stuff to talk about there. But when it comes to Corbin Burnes, this is consensus that he is one of the best pitchers, best starters in baseball for probably 3 years now, 4 years now. This is the type of guy that you see on the card and you go, oh, Brewers are winning today. No matter how bad the Brewers were doing, Brewers are winning today. They got Corbin Burnes to stop the bleeding. Well, now, not anymore. We do. The Orioles have Corbin Burnes to stop any bleeding that might happen. And he's that guy. I know some metrics and some analysts will tell you he's taking a step back. Please. He's getting old. And please. This is new. This is a new kind of talk. The man is 30, and people are starting to say he's decreasing. No. Baseball is like 32, 33. And that's the old baseball. Now, it's probably more like 34, 35 before guys really start falling off. And listen, even if Corbin Burnes isn't what he was 2 years ago, give me Corbin Burnes last year, and I'm more than happy. Like, that's an X factor. Just name alone, name recognition alone, when another team is going into a series with Baltimore Orioles and one of the 3 games has Corbin Burnes penciled in there. They're worried. They're looking at the other 2 games going, we better get at least one of those 2 because Corbin's tough, man. Corbin's tough, and sometimes baseball is such a mental game that means everything. The idea that these guys see Corbin Burnes' name out there and they go, oh, that ain't going to be our day. Yeah, sometimes that can play in your favor because you're too loose. You're so loose that you find a way to the baseball. But other times, you just know it's going to be a tough day at the ballpark. And when Corbin Burnes is pitching against you, as we saw, I believe, twice. Last year, I believe. Both times. But maybe 2 or 3 times in the last couple years, we faced Corbin Burnes. And he dominated these Orioles. Dominated. And again, I know at least one. Almost sure. At least one was last year. When the Orioles were rolling. They're hot. 101 win team. And he gunned them down. Shut them down. This is a bona fide ace, guys. Everyone's talking 1-year rental. I don't think it's necessarily a 1-year rental. Let's see how good he does. See the type of number he wants. See what happens. Either way, best believe he's going to be more than motivated this year heading into free agency. Sometimes their mindset, guys with mindsets, you can worry about that. They get too up about it. I don't see that being Corbin Burnes. Everything I've heard from him, everything I've read, seems like this is a man that is more than comfortable with his financial position, more than comfortable going into free agency and not trying to kill himself for this year, which will wind up resulting in possibly his best season ever. He's going to be loose. He's going to be free. Hopefully he's getting 6 runs a game help from these Baltimore Orioles offense. I'm a big better too. You guys will find out. I like this sports gamble. Corbin Burnes for Cy Young right now is one of my favorite things on the entire board. Truly. I love it. I love Corbin Burnes this season. It's a huge bring-in. Because that's the type of guy, listen, nobody wins 20 anymore, but you get 16, 17, 3.2 ERA, and again, that's a Corbin Burnes that isn't at his best. Because if you get the Corbin Burnes at his best, you're getting those 16, 17 wins, maybe 20 wins, with an ERA of about 2.6, 2.4. Does that sound good to you? Sounds good to me. This is a major move, and also when you especially look at who they gave up. I'm big believers in both Joey Ortiz and DL Hall. I like them both. But frankly, I think they were each 25 years old already. DL is going from the rotation to the bullpen to the rotation to the bullpen, and the Orioles still couldn't figure out which way they want to zig or zag with him. Frankly, I think, they already know the answer. They already knew the answer, and that's one of the reasons why they were willing to move him. Because he seems like, a lefty that you bring in the 7th or 8th inning, and he's got some electric stuff. He's got good stuff. But let's be honest. If you fast forward 6 years from now, could you see DL Hall having played for 4 or 5 different teams? I could. These bullpen guys, especially lefties, they can bounce around a lot, man. So don't be surprised if DL Hall winds up with the second Orioles run in his career. I wouldn't be shocked. But I think he's going to be a nice major league pitcher. Just probably more of a middle to back end relief guy who probably isn't ever a closer. And ultimately, I just don't think will ever be a starter. So that's why you move him. And again, age-wise, I mean, I'm on these Orioles prospects every single day for every single year for my entire life. I feel like I've heard DL Hall's name for a decade now. Now, I know it's not been that long. Probably 4 years. But still, as far as prospects go, time's ticking. Now you look at Joey Ortiz, another guy. I think a nice major league player. I think a starter. I could see him being an all-star second baseman along the way. I know he's primarily a shortstop. I don't think he sticks there. I think second base he has second base written all over him. And I could see him having a couple nice years. But ultimately, look at this team. Look at this roster. Look at the guys that are blocking him. He's flanked by guys who I just think are more talented. If not definitely more talented when you start talking the likes of Gunnar Henderson, Jackson Holiday. Odds are Jordan Westburg. Like, these are guys that I just like better than Joey Ortiz, and they did too. So you take those two guys and you, with a competitive balance pick, and you flip them for one of the best pitchers in baseball. MLB.com had him ranked second of all major league pitchers, starting pitchers. Is that accurate? I don't know. Maybe it's not the most accurate. But ultimately, he's a top 10 pitcher, almost unanimously. Top 10 starter in the league. And you give up next to nothing. And again, yeah, if free agency looms, who cares? Again, we have Grayson Rodriguez. By next year, hell, by the end of this year, hell, by June, Grayson Rodriguez could be looked at as a top 2 pitcher in baseball. He could be the one on MLB's list next year at number 2. So don't sleep on the rest of this rotation. And again, if Corbin Burnes has taken a step back, do I think it's significant? No. Statistically, it didn't show significantly. And he still performed at a very, very high level last year when he wasn't the Cy Young winner. We want to go back 2 years? I mean, you're bringing in a Cy Young winner. Truly. When's the last time the Orioles had a bona fide Cy Young winner in their starting rotation? Anyone? Anyone? I can't even think of one. Obviously, like the Palmers, but I'm talking anytime recent. I'm pretty sure Messina never won one. And again, that's taking us back to the 90s. I know Sidney Ponson didn't get one. Like, Chris Tillman might have had a year where he was up there, but he didn't win. Again, I'm talking bona fide, caliber, Cy Young man, in his prime, leading this rotation. It's unbelievable news. Unbelievable news. If I remember correctly, the ownership and the Corbin Burnes news broke, I think, back-to-back days or within a 3-day span or something. Amazing. It was an amazing time. It was an amazing moment. Couple days, week, to be a Baltimore Orioles fan. Just because of the hope and the promise and the idea that, yeah, anything can happen, man. Anything could happen. But I don't see how this team doesn't exceed last year's expectations. Maybe they don't win 101. I'll take 96. Even if it's not for the division, I'll take 96 and getting to the ALCS. Because I think they win the ALCS. I look around the American League especially. I don't see the competition. I don't. These Orioles are the head of the American League. And they're not going anywhere. Moves like this Corbin Burnes move just show that. And frankly, as we're about to touch on, that was the positive stuff. We're about to touch on a negative thing. The injuries. First day of camp. I can't tell you how excited I was first day of camp. That lasted 24 hours until the second day of camp, and the news from the physicals on the first day came out. And it was loaded. But let's call it what it is, okay? There were 4 injuries talked about on that first day of camp. Some significant. Some not so much. So we're going to break it down. I'll go from least important to most important, okay? Sam Pasala. Unbelievably talented catching prospect for us. He got an elbow thing. It seemed like the team knew about it in the offseason. Seems like this was something they understood happened, understood got cleaned up, understood he was recovering from. No reason to think they didn't know about this one. And frankly, no matter how talented he was, or is, I don't think he was making the Major League roster this year. Adley. That's all I have to say. One word, Adley. But if you want me to elaborate, between Adley and James McCann, outside of an injury, there is no spot for another catcher. And frankly, even if one of them gets hurt, like last year I believe McCann got hurt for a couple weeks, we got other guys that they like that can come in and run backup catcher work for us for a couple weeks. I don't think Sam Pasala was coming into the majors. I don't think he was getting to Baltimore this year. So, that's fine. If anything, I could argue that's a good injury. Why? Well, because it's a minor elbow cleanup sort of John. That's nothing crazy. That happens all the time in baseball. But Sam Pasala was one of those guys that every team was asking about in trades. Every team was asking about in trades. And clearly, we don't want to give them up. Top catching prospects are hard to come by. Especially international signed. This is possibly has the makings of the greatest international signing player the Orioles have ever had. I know that's saying a lot for a guy who's yet to play Major League Baseball, but it has all the makings. Mostly because they just haven't really signed international guys much, if at all, in the past. Definitely not very successfully when they did. So who knows about that one? But again, am I worried? No. Do I think they're worried? Absolutely not. And it's actually, I think, a positive because that gets his name off of those trade talks. So when we get deeper in the season, when we're 2 months in, when we're next to the trade deadline, guess what? Teams aren't calling asking for him. So he hasn't really played much this year. DH in most of the year. Teams are a little off him, I would say. Once that gets to that point. So I'm okay with that. If we need to make another move for a bullpen piece, or another rotation arm, or whatever it may be, guess who? They're probably not going to ask for. Awesome. One of our top prospects now, other teams aren't going to ask for. Phenomenal. Because I still love the kid. I still think he's a great prospect. Like I said, has all the makings of potentially the greatest international signee by the Orioles ever. Down the line. So that was injury number 1. Injury number 2. John Means. Another one. I think team knew about. Team was not shocked to say, oh, John Means is a little behind schedule. Guess what? That's been the last 2 years of John Means. Everything since he tore his his elbow and got Tommy John has been John Means delayed, John Means setback, John Means screwed up his back while rehabbing his elbow. Awesome. Then he comes back last year at the very end, and it's exciting. And I was excited. I was talking it up. And then he gets hurt again. And then before you know it, he's missing the postseason. And, that didn't last long. Wasn't a ton of postseason to miss for him. But neither here or there. It's been the last 2 years of John Means. I'm not shocked. And I don't think they're shocked to hear John Means is behind schedule. And he should be back first month or two of the season. Awesome. Guess what? As much as I love John Means, and I think John Means could be a major X factor for this team, talk about a potential Cy Young candidate. If that man's healthy and pitching right, last time we saw that, he was a legitimate Cy Young candidate. That was for a crappy Orioles team. Imagine him on a good one, a great one. Yeah, he could be a major X factor, but was I counting on it? Not a lick. Not a shot in hell. I was counting on John Means to remain healthy during this season. I was hoping. I'm still hoping. I'm wishing. I'd love it. Not counting on it. It's not the reason why I was so gung-ho high on this Orioles rotation, even before they brought in Corbin Burnes. Awesome name to have. Love to have him. I love Meansy. Again, legitimate Cy Young candidate if he is healthy and pitching for this team. He's got to get healthy. Hopefully, the setback isn't that bad. Again, I think it was planned by the Orioles. Why rush him? Why kill him? Give him an extra month. Give him an extra couple weeks. So we'll see. Meansy was there. So then you got Gunnar Henderson. Now we get into the big names. I mean, anytime you say the name Gunnar Henderson along with injury, it's terrifying. It's a kid, run AL Rookie of the Year last year. Has legitimate MVP possibilities this year. I mean, hell, when Gunnar was hot, there was almost no one hotter in the league last year. He's special. He's a superstar caliber player. And he plays like one. And listen, it sucks because the last memory I have of Gunnar Henderson is getting tossed out on the base paths in the ALDS Game 1. That's not on him. He got the sign right. The other guy didn't. So, not on Gunnar. And frankly, it was relatively close. Yeah, he was out. But I'm not going to put that on that young kid. He hustles. He works hard. Does it the Oriole way. He grinds. And he's as talented as damn near anyone in the league. We're essentially looking, I think, at a young Corey Seager. And look what Corey Seager just did for the Rangers last year. Oh, don't forget what Corey Seager did years before for the Dodgers. I mean, we're talking about a legitimate power, speed, defensive threat. A man who could have won Gold Glove at either shortstop or third base last year. That's how good he is. I love Gunnar. So obviously, it's terrifying when you see his name on the injury report. However, it's an oblique. Listen, I joke the oblique's the biggest muscle in baseball. You use that thing for fucking everything in baseball. So yeah, it's scary because these things linger too. How many times have you heard a baseball player pulled his oblique? Oh, strained his oblique. And about 4 months later, he's doing an interview going, yeah, that thing literally stuck with me all season. You hear it time and time again in baseball. So is it a little worrisome? Yeah. But, he's young. He's a young kid. I think 22. Oh, he recovers quick. These young kids recover quick. It's not a 36-year-old pulling his oblique. It's a young 20-year-old. I'm happy. I shouldn't say I'm happy. I'm not worried about it lasting all season. If anything, I think at worst case, maybe it hinders him the first half of the season, which would suck. But you're gonna get the vibe that at the end of the day, I'm an eternal optimist. So yeah, I could make the argument, okay, maybe it hinders him the first half of the season. Well, I think this team is still good enough in that first half to be right up there with everybody. And if you're telling me then come second half, Gunnar Henderson is healthy and playing at an MVP caliber like he can? I mean, one, that's what winning teams have happen. Two, that's what great players do. That's what MVPs do. And three, again, he's young. So he should heal way before the All-Star break. But I don't think it's that terrible because I think he can still be more than productive and be out on the field and be a positive guy. Be a positive war guy. Even if his oblique is bothering him for the first, again, month, half of the season. A young man like that, I'm not worried about that oblique carrying further. Obviously, it's not the news you want. I got MVP caliber ideas for the kid. That's what I think the type of year he's going to have. Even with the oblique. Frankly, I don't think there's any chance in hell he misses opening day. And who knows? He could be 98% by opening day. Maybe 65%. I don't know. I don't know what the oblique's going to do. But all I know is that once that does recover, this is a kid that's going to grind, work his ass off, and be one of the best shortstop / third basemen in the league, depending on where he's playing this season. Obviously, the roster has some roster construction, especially that infield, but really, the outfield and pitching staff all over has a lot of construction. So now it takes us to the number one injury, and by this point, I've said it, you've probably heard it, I'm sure you know about it if you're here listening. Corbin Burnes. Kyle Bradish, UCL tear. I mean, last thing you want to hear from the guy who was a Cy Young candidate for you last year. Not what you want. But I wonder if the Orioles kind of knew about this one too. They didn't seem shocked by it. They didn't seem like they were thrown for a wrench by it. He said, what you want? No. But I'll tell you, even when they got announced, I had some hope. Because the Orioles were like, oh, well, one, we're not worried. He's going to be here this year. Well, that's not something you say if you expect a guy to get Tommy John. You're not telling all of these fans, don't panic. Don't hit the panic button. Mike Elias, don't hit the panic button. You're not saying that. In fact, you're saying the opposite. You're saying, we fully expect him to be here this year. That's what I want to hear. That makes me not worry. Another thing that makes me not worry is that the Orioles started a throwing program with him the next day. They didn't say, hey, we saw this tear. Hopefully we can start a throwing program in a week or two. So we hear that all the time. Let's see how the inflammation goes down. Run another couple scans. And then if everything's positive, he'll start throwing in a week or two. No! That's not what Mike Elias said. Mike Elias said he's starting a throwing routine tomorrow. You don't do that if you expect the man to miss time. And since then, I don't have my exact calendar out, but it's been about a week, let's say. It's been about a week since that news, since he's been starting the throwing program. And he threw. Might not have been live BP or 100%, but if nothing more, he took a baseball and went like that with an elbow that apparently has a UCL tear. And we're a week removed, and still, no bad news. No bad news. You would think that if a guy needed Tommy John, you'd say, all right, well, we're just going to get this. This isn't Batista at the end of last year where you're like, okay, well, we're making this great push. Let's see if we can get him to the finish line with us. And then they couldn't, and then they decided to get Tommy John because either way he was missing this year most likely. And we'll get to the Batista stuff because, like any Orioles fan right now, I think we have a glimmer of hope. We might see that man at the end of the year, even though everything we hear is not till next year. Not till next year. And that makes sense. My point is that this Bradish situation, we're not near the finish line like we were with Batista. We're not around that point. No, we have the entire season. So there's no way if a man needs Tommy John, you're not just going to say, hey, just get Tommy John. You're going to say that. You're not going to say, hey, let's start throwing. Let's see what you got. Let's see if we can make it through a little more. Because, let me tell you, we still have all of spring training. If you want to ramp him up, you want to get him prepared, you're not going to start the throwing program unless you're confident that he's going to be there, that there's something to prepare for, that there's something to work up to. And that's why I'm not worried about the Kyle Bradish news. Because to me, yes, I love Bradish. Before we traded for Corbin, he was one of the ones that I was saying, we have to. We have to have Kyle Bradish. Now with Corbin, I'd love to have Bradish, but it's essentially a swap. It's essentially swapping one Cy Young candidate for another. Okay, if that's the reality and we don't have Kyle Bradish, fine. I'm still confident because before Corbin, I was confident. And Burnes, Bradish, I'm all over the place. And when it was just Bradish, Gray Rod, again, I didn't even trust Means was going to be there. Kremer, and then you pick your fifth. Listen, I was optimistic. I was the one saying you don't need to go and trade all this for a starter because that's good enough. Well, trading for Corbin Burnes is even better. And it's even better especially when you see what happened to Kyle Bradish. Because it gives you some leeway. Again, yes, would I love 2 Cy Young candidates? Potentially even a third with Gray Rod, let's say. Potentially even a fourth with Means. Would I love all of them in this rotation? Absolutely. But, listen, man, we're not building an all-star team. We're building, hopefully, a World Series team. And in that, you just need that one guy that you can count on, man. And I was confident that even before Burnes, we had that one guy, whether it was Bradish, whether it was Gray Rod, whether it was Means, whether it was Kremer. Hell, whether it was one of these young kids. Shit, Cole Irvin. I know that sounds outrageous, but Cole Irvin could have a hell of a year. The man came in 15 pounds lighter. Did a lot of core work. Listen, last year he came in looking like me in camp. This year he looks good. He looks thin. Looks in shape. So listen, who am I to tell you that Cole Irvin's not going to put it all together for 1 year? Who knows? My point is that I'm not as worried about the Bradish. One, because again, they haven't made it this thing. That's the end. They haven't said he needs Tommy John. In fact, everything they've said has led you to believe he won't need Tommy John. This is something that can heal on its own, that he can pitch with, that won't get worse. Hopefully the good news continues. Or at least, hopefully, we don't get more bad news about it. Because no bad news is good news in these situations. I don't need you to tell me it's magically healed. But when you look at the imaging, I'm just hoping you're not going to tell me that it's now completely torn. Or it's now getting worse because he's throwing a baseball. So listen, bad news? Yeah, sure. Would I have loved all 4 of those to not be on an injury report? Would I love to start the season with Bradish and Means in the starting rotation? Of course. Would I love Gunnar to not have an oblique injury that might even keep him out of opening day, even though there is no way that young man misses opening day in Orioles Park at Camden Yards. But Would I love it? Yeah, I would love it. Am I okay with going kind of skeleton crew? Kind of seeing what we have. I love it. I actually love it. Assuming that Means and Bradish both can get back to this rotation, let's say within the first 2-3 months, I'm okay with that. Let's see what Gray Rod has when he has to step up and be the number 2. Let's see Burnes be that ace that we brought him in to be. Let's see Kremer go back to being a stud, because he was a stud last year. That man continues to take step and step and step. So why not have him take one more step? If at the very least, let's just make sure he's not taking 1 or 2 steps back. Because as long as he's at the point where he was last year, hell, there's room in major league rotations for average major league pitchers. Just be average. I think when I was reading up something the other day talking about his home runs were the problem last year, that everything else pretty much looked similar, but it was just that he was giving up too many long balls. Well, guess what? Some of that can be bad luck. I didn't crunch the numbers. I don't know if it was more bad luck or just bad results or just bad pitches. I don't know. What I do know is something like that could be cleaned up. And you know, baseball's a funny game. One year you go giving up 30 home runs. Next year you might give up 3. And guess what? These guys might have hit it the exact same. Again, every other number might be the same. But maybe the balls that get hit harder, more of on a line drive. Not so high. Don't get over those fences. Stop at a double. That's all it is. It's baseball. So don't be crazy if Kremer can have a very nice year. Again, average to slightly above average. It's all we need him to be. And then again, I brought up Cole Irvin. Listen, I don't hate Cole Irvin. I didn't hate bringing him in last year. I didn't love him. He was one of these guys I was like, But he has some potential. And he's done some good things in the majors. Again, I don't need you to be elite. I don't need you to be this star. At a certain point, just be average. Slightly above average. There's room at the bottom of a rotation for those guys. And then let's talk about the other guys that I think have real chances at, if not making the major league roster on opening day, it's shortly down the road if guys like Irvin, guys like Bradish aren't back. Guys like Means aren't back. Like if Irvin and Kremer take steps back. Well then, let me tell you, we got some real talent to bring up. Truly, you already have Tyler Wells, who personally I think could even be the closer for this team come postseason. I love Tyler Wells. Don't forget, he led the majors in WHIP as a starter for the first 2 months of last season before he got some fatigue, which caused his numbers to go down, which caused him to get sent down to the minors. But he's a big boy. He throws hard. He's a real major league pitcher. So guess what? Last year was a learning experience. And if you need him to be a starter, this is the time. This is the time. Start him as a starter this year. Do exactly what you did last year with him if you need to. But again, he led the majors in WHIP. Walks, hit, and inning pitched for 2 months to start the year. He was the guy, the Orioles pitcher, that everyone was talking about 2 months into the season. And then, again, he gets sent to the minors because he's fatigued. And he starts losing his stuff. Lost some mechanics. But again, you work on that with these young kids. Tyler Wells, whether it's as a starter, a reliever, a closer, I could be the president of his fan club. The amount of times I'm out in these streets talking about Tyler Wells to people. The man is completely undervalued. Huge X factor for this team. And don't be surprised if he's the big name that steps up and helps them bridge this gap with Bradish and Means and keeps a spot in the rotation even when they're back. Don't be shocked when going into postseason we're going, Tyler Wells gets the ball for game 3. You're looking at me like I'm crazy. And probably I am if Bradish is healthy and Burnes and Grayrod are still there. I mean, there's your 3. Don't be surprised then if Wells is a 4th. Truly. Hell, one of them has a tough year if he could be 3rd. Or, again, bullpen piece. Because he's great in the bullpen. I love him out of the bullpen. And I've been preaching without Batista, he's probably the guy that should be closing games. I'm happy to bring in Kimbrel. You bring in this veteran. There's a lot of young kids in this clubhouse. A lot in the bullpen. You bring in Kimbrel. Okay, that's great. But I saw Kimbrel kind of start losing it last year, if not a few years before. Okay? It could go off the rails and real quick with Craig Kimbrel. And I hope not. Trust me, I talked about gambling. I'm going to have him to leave the league in saves. I think that's a decent bet. But I also could see him just losing the job. I could see him not having the stuff he used to. I could, even though reports out of camp earlier are that not only does he have the stuff that he used to, but it's popping, baby. It's popping. But let's just say scenario is it's not going great. Maybe it starts out good. It starts getting off the rails. He starts blowing a lot of these saves. It's not looking good. Well, Tyler Wells is the guy I would want to bring in. Maybe Yennier Cano. But we'll see how Cano does this year. Would I be shocked if Cano takes a step back off of what he did last year? No. I mean, he had such a historic pace, it would make sense statistically, if nothing more, that there's going to be a small step back. Maybe he's still just as productive, even without the historic numbers to start. But do I trust Cano in the 9th? Maybe in April. Maybe in May. We're talking September, October, November. I have to see a lot from Yennier Cano to trust that man in that spot. And that's nothing against him. Sometimes he can just be a little wild. I need my guys hitting the zone late in the game. I think Tyler Wells could be that man, truly. If Craig Kimbrel does not work out, and we don't bring in a stud closer, and Yennier Cano isn't not showing what he needs to be that 9th inning guy, even if he's showing everything in the world to be that 8th inning guy again. I just don't know how Tyler Wells isn't a big part of this team. Again, whether it's rotation, whether it's bullpen, whatever it is. Then we got the young kids who haven't done it yet. Chase McDermott, Cade Pavich, Seth Johnson. These are all big-time starting names. And Elias came out and said, we love them all as starters. They are all starting pitchers. Let me tell you, go back to D.L. Hall. I don't remember that kind of he is a starting pitcher talk. They said he could do both. We're going to figure it out. Going to try him as a starter. He might be a reliever. He wound up being used as a reliever. And let me tell you, these 3 kids might at some point this season get used out of the pen. But ultimately, it's okay for their development. You can have that with young pitchers where you are going to be a starter. But this year, we just need an inning or 2 out of you every few days in the bullpen. But they have elite arm talent. Like I said, McDermott, Pavich, Johnson. These are real names that come May, June, July, you might be hearing a lot about. And they've looked good from what I've heard in camp. Listen, they're all going to start in the minor leagues unless somehow they have an unbelievable run this camp. Then maybe Elias and these guys, Hyder, say, okay, kid, you wowed the hell out of us. There's nothing we can't do to keep you off of this roster. I don't see that happening. It's too talented of a team. Even losing 2 of your 5 starting pitchers This is still way too talented. Again, you have the rotation go Burnes, Grayrod, Kremer, Wells, and Irvin. That's probably your 5 starters out of camp. But let me tell you, in 2 months, it's going to look much better. Because hopefully then you have Bradish and Means back. And again, if Irvin, if Wells, one of these guys is pitching big time, listen, it's a good problem to have. That's all I'll say. It'll be a good problem to have. And I'm excited. Now, talking about a kid who has to wow in camp, but I think has a lot better of a chance and a road to making this opening day Orioles roster, and that's Jackson Holliday. I mean, he's the talk of baseball as far as prospects go. Everybody, every time I go on Instagram, MLB and the Orioles, and everybody is posting Jackson Holliday, number one prospect. It's ironic because we've had 3 straight years of number one prospects between Adley, Gunnar, and now Jackson. It's special. It is. And personally, listen, I know he doesn't have a ton of experience in these minors. I think he played a week or 2 in AAA last year. Like 7 games, I think? Jackson Holliday's back-to-ball skills, speed, defense, and just overall mindset and work ethic, right? He understands how to act in a clubhouse. He understands how to be around these grown adult professionals. Take it like a job. A job you love. A job that's paying you a ton, but a job nonetheless. Yeah, it's the kid's game. But let me tell you, it's a job out there. And when these young kids come in and they take it too lackadaisical, that rubs the veterans the wrong way. Jackson's not that guy. Grew up in a clubhouse. Matt Holliday. I mean, this kid was born to do it. He said the other day, he doesn't think he can be any more prepared for this moment. Well, I think he's saying that because he knows he's making this roster. And I'll say a point that I don't think I've heard anywhere else, but that shows to me that he is making this roster, and that was the Corbin Burnes trade. Not so much going out and bringing in that pitcher, but the idea that they sent a competitive balance pick to the Brewers in that. Mike Elias, just 2 months ago, was talking about how we're still building through the draft. Just because all these kids are coming up and we're not picking number 1 overall anymore doesn't mean that this draft isn't the lifeblood for this organization. But then you traded competitive balance pick. Well, guess what? MLB now has a rule that if you have this prospect, rookie, start the season on opening day on the roster, you get that competitive balance pick, baby. That just shows me that they know Jackson's going to be there unless he goes out and he hits 100 this spring and he looks well overmatched. Okay, then we can write off that idea. We can go off that plan. We can decide to not hinder his future for a competitive balance pick. It's not the end of the world not getting that. But let me tell you, you're crazy if you don't think Mike Elias wants that. If the wheels weren't turning about him giving one up because he was probably going to get one back. That's how this works. That's how these guys work. At least a man like Mike Elias and this front office who's been so spectacular and so amazing. I cannot emphasize how much trust and respect I have for all of the people in that front office. It's been amazing. But let me tell you, they have a plan. More than maybe any other front office in baseball. It seems like at times they have a plan. It's playing chess when others are playing checkers. And that's the type of move where you look at Jackson Holliday and you go, yeah, maybe he could use another month in the minor. But what's a month? He's going to figure it out. He has the right mindset. And again, he has the tools. Bat-to-ball skills. Some power. A lot of speed. Great defense. Can play short. Can play second. Like, we're going to find out if he has what it takes this spring. But I think his path to opening day is so much better than some of these other young guys, like those 3 minor league pitchers that I talked about earlier. And it's because of that competitive balance pick. And I think I saw that as soon as they did that Burnes trade. And that was the third piece, that balance. I was like, Jackson's going to be on this team day one. He's a part of this. And that's another message that I think is going to be sent. Yes, you have to earn the spot. But he's a part of this. He's going to be a major factor in this ascension for these Orioles, in winning that World Series. Is he the number 1? Maybe not. Is he going to be number 2 or 3? Good chance. Good chance. Either way, he's part of that core that I was talking about, being able to keep moving forward long after their arbitration years are done. Keeping that core together. Adley, Gunnar, Jackson, Greyrod. I mean, we'll see with the outfielders. That's another thing. Look at the outfield right now. The prospects in it. And yet the 3 starters are the real veterans of the offense. Truly. Got Mullins, Hayes, Santander. It's a hell of an outfield. And then you look in the minors and you go, oh my goodness. We got Colton Cowser. Got Heston Kjerstad. And that's not including other names like Judd Fabian and some of these other guys that are a little farther down and blocked. I mean, hell, I don't even know if there's space for Cowser. I don't even know if there's space for Heston. These kids will get their chance, their real chance. They had the taste last year, those 2. One did very poorly. The other one did pretty solid. But at the end of the day, neither of those define those kids. And they're unbelievable prospects. Blue chip prospects. The whole thing is blue chip prospects. And I'll touch on that in maybe tomorrow's episode. Because I need to do research and really go down and look at exactly where all these guys were picked in the draft. Because baseball doesn't work that way usually. You look at these rosters and, yeah, you have a lot of international signings. But guess what? You got some undrafted guys. Got a lot of guys in the 37th round or 21st round or 15th round. And I'm not bashing them. Sometimes guys with unbelievable talents drop that far in the Major League Draft because they think they're going to college. They've told these teams, I'm going to college. And then there's a team that drafts them and goes, we'll give you over $1 million, even though you're in the 15th round. And he goes, screw it, I'm in. And maybe he was a first-round talent. Maybe he was a blue chip that just thought he was going to go play at Vanderbilt instead. Oh, speaking of Vanderbilt, talk about young outfielders. Bradfield. Enrique Bradfield. Another stud. Another blue chip. This team has so much depth and talent. And again, blue chip talent. Where you go down and you go first round, second round, competitive balance, first round, second round, third round, second round. Like, again, I'll break this down for you. Maybe tomorrow's episode. But just off the top of my head, I know. They're blue chips. And that doesn't happen. Even when the team tanks like the Orioles tanked. Even when the team has 2 number 1 overall picks in a 4-year span or whatever it was. Usually you miss. That's baseball. It's hard to draft in baseball. Mike Elias and these folks are making it look easy. Everybody they draft turns to gold. And let me tell you, a part of that is the developmental team, the coaching staffs that these Orioles have. They've invested in every single level. And it shows. They take these guys. Look at a Yanier Cano. Take these guys. Who, may have a ton of talent. But they are a wild stallion. And they rein them in. And they find a way to get them to be all-stars. This is what they do. The front office and the coaching staff and the developmental and the analytics, it all is this perfect symphony right now. It's all gold. So why would I not expect these other guys to be good? And you're not going to have a 100% hit rate, man. You're not. One of these pitchers are probably going to come up and not be great. Maybe Povich isn't as good. But guess what? Maybe Johnson's even better. And maybe McDermott's even better than the other two. And at the end of the day, yeah, maybe we wind up moving them. A couple of them. Somebody. Because this team isn't complete right now. Might be. If everybody lives up to what they're capable of, if everybody takes a step forward from last year, yeah, the team could be complete. But let me tell you, the organization is in a situation that if it's not complete, we got plenty of bullets to go get guys to make it complete. Whether it's in the bullpen, whether it's in the rotation. I don't see anybody getting at it offensively. But who knows? Who knows? Frankly, there's a lot of pressure, I believe, on these veterans, especially if you look at those three outfield veterans in Hayes, Santander, and Mullins. I mean, listen, I think Mullins has 2 years left on his deal. Santander's, I think, a free agent at the end of the year. Hayes, I think, has maybe one arbitration year left, I believe. Either way, that group, let me tell you, you got to step up and you got to play hard this year. You got to play great. And they can. They are. I believe they can. They've all shown that they can play some of the top outfield in baseball. At least offensively. When they're clicking, they're one of the scariest outfields in baseball. But there's pressure on them this year because you got guys on your tail. You got guys behind you who can play. And again, we're looking to win it all. We're looking to make that run. So while Mike Elias isn't going to just willy-nilly just deal guys and make crazy moves, who says they can't do a big-time deal? This is so hypothetical what I'm about to say. And it's not even necessarily in the reality of what's possible because I just don't think that this would work. But let's just go out and say, I don't know, one or two of these outfielders are struggling. So we bring up Kowser and Heston, and they're good, but they're just not over the top. Well, what if we went out and traded for Mike Trout? Again, completely hypothetical. I don't see it happening. I don't see the need for it right now, especially. But if you look in this outfield, these veterans are not living up to where you need them to be. And the rookies are not quite where it is. Well, then maybe you package some of them. And you go and make an unbelievable blockbuster. And would I be scared? Yeah, there's a lot of years left on that deal. It's a lot of money. Getting the new ownership. Less scared of that, I believe. And if you're talking about a generational talent, such as like a Mike Trout, you go out and you make that move if you need to. If the guys aren't producing. That's all down the road. That's all hypotheticals. As for right now, heck, we just started spring training baseball. Games just started. No better time to start this podcast. Clearly, I'm excited. Clearly, I'm thrilled. I've waited my whole life for this team to be where they are right now, this organization. And it feels good. I'm a relish in it. But the job's not done. Far from it. At the end of the day, though, like Buck Showalter said one time, I like our guys. I like our guys. Yeah, the Dodgers can pay $400 million. Teams, the Yankees can bring in Soto or whoever. Good. I like our guys. These Orioles are here to compete this season. These Orioles are the real deal. And I couldn't be any more excited about it, gang. That's why I started this podcast. That's why I'm here talking to you. That's why I'm not going anywhere. Talkin Orioles Baseball Podcast. It's the premier place to get your Orioles, I don't know if you want to call it news or information or just banter. Just to hear somebody ramble about the Baltimore Orioles. This is where it's at, guys. This is where it's at. And we're going to get very in-depth with this stuff. There's plenty of times to break down specific players and specific situations. And obviously, once real games start, heck, it's always something to talk about. It's exciting. It's a new season. Anyone could win, including us. This could be the year. I believe it. I know Birdland believes it. I know this team believes it. Brandon Hyde, Michael Elias, everyone in that organization believes this could be the year. But believe me, they're coming. Because I could show you videos from 2 years ago. Literally 2 years ago during spring training. Where I was telling you, the Orioles are coming. And I was preaching them to win the AL and win the World Series. Not necessarily win it, but that they were good value bets. Preaching some MVPs and Cy Youngs. Did all of those work out? No. That was the year before last year. Last year it worked out to a degree. Heck, I can't tell you how much money the Orioles made me last year, but it's not about the money for me. As much as the Orioles make me money when I gamble on them, because I know the team. I know when to gamble on them. I know how to gamble on them. But it's more than the money. It means everything to me. I love these Baltimore Orioles. And I love where they're at right now. It makes me so happy to see where they are at right now. Because there have been those dark days, man. 13 straight losing seasons. It was dark. David Seguis and the amount of names I could tell you. I don't even want to bring them up. We'll have plenty of those episodes where we laugh about all of those guys. The David Seguis of the world, the Orioles world. Or the Tony, the guy that batted like this. Tony something. I'll figure it out. We'll have all of those. We'll have lots of laughs. We'll enjoy ourselves. We're going to enjoy this season. It's going to be fun. And I think that this is going to be a great thing. Like I said, nobody cares and nobody talks about the Baltimore Orioles with the passion and vigor that I do. At least nobody does it more. Nobody cares more about these Orioles than I do. Even the Orioles themselves. So I promise you, this ain't going anywhere. This is just episode 1. And I cannot wait for opening day. I'll be there. I hope a lot of you guys will be too. Reach out to me if you're going to be at opening day, because I will be there. And let me tell you, by the time opening day comes, I'm hoping this podcast can be a bit of a staple in Birdland. People start recognizing it. But even if they don't, I'm not going anywhere, guys. I'm going to keep talking Baltimore Orioles baseball till I die. This is what I love. It's what I love to do. It's what I'm passionate about. Hey, we all have our passions. And mine is Baltimore Orioles baseball. So with that, gang, go wrap it up. Trust me, I could sit here and talk to you all day. I could talk 12 straight hours about every which angle of everything. But I promise you, we'll be back tomorrow. And we're going to have another great conversation about Orioles baseball. And we'll dig into more. Maybe have a little more laughs. Maybe have a little more fun. Today, it was about getting to serious stuff. The ownership, the stadium, Corbin, the injuries. Kind of, some of the position battles. And we'll break all of that down in depth. And we'll dig into the details. For today, let's just watch some spring training baseball for the first time. I'm excited to see these O's back on the field, guys. And I think this is going to be, no pun intended, a magical season for these Orioles. So, with that being said, Benny signing off. This was Talkin Orioles Baseball Podcast, Episode 1. See you tomorrow, gang. Go O's.